1.
Welcome. You're watching Illegal Knowledge. This is Michael, and I'd like to welcome you to the Season 4, Episode 3. The episode is called Let's End Time Banks, the Future of Local Currencies. Right? Yeah, okay. We're just testing to make sure the sound works. So welcome, and I wanted to let you know the website that you can see right here on your screen has new shows on it. Let me switch over. You can now look at, you can click to watch earlier seasons. This is a very small screen, so we have no videos available for Season 1, but we have videos for Season 2, 3, and we're currently in 4. And so I wanted to let everyone know, go to the website, illegalknowledge.com, and you can check out all the old shows. There's a YouTube channel, Illegal Knowledge TV, and you can also, if you have any of the shows that I'm missing, you can go ahead and send me email, and I can digitize the copy and give it back to you. So I'd really, really like it if anyone recorded any of the old shows that are not there, like first season and a couple from second season. It would be awesome if we can get those somehow back into the group of shows here. The other thing is, as you can see, there's a Twitter. If you can call in, or I mean, you don't have to call in, but you can call in at the numbers here, or you can tweet me with your questions for the show. That is at IKTV 403. And I'll be monitoring the Twitter feed here all night. You can also, there's a Facebook thing there. I didn't put that up there, but there's Illegal Knowledge on Facebook if you search for Illegal Knowledge. And I'm going to go ahead and put the phone numbers back. I just want to let you know the next show is on May 19th, same time, same channel. Hi, Kyler. All right. So, getting on with the show, this is Let's End Time Banks. It's the future of local currencies. And the reason I was talking about this particularly is because on Sustainable Tucson has a, as you can see there, they have a new time traders network. And if you go and click on the sign up here, right there, and you fill out the form here and sign me up, you can go ahead and log in to the ttt.metasofa.org or tucson.timebanks.org and start your trading. Now, I had invited some people from Sustainable Tucson to be on the show, and they kind of the whole system isn't quite working to its best abilities yet, so they declined to come on because they didn't want to promote something that wasn't totally ready, which I guess I understand, but at the same time we could have talked about just local currencies in general. Also, there's a thing going on with the National Occupy movement. They want to get they want to occupy the global financial system, and they're trying to basically create a parallel financial system on essentially an alternate currency. And so that is what we're talking about tonight. Also, if you're out there and listening, Tom Greco, you're a really hard man to reach, and I was trying to get you on the show, and I don't know if anyone got in touch with you, but I certainly couldn't reach you, so it would have been nice to have you on, but oh well. And so anyway, so let's see. The history of local economic trading systems. We have basically, it's really the history of money and what is really going on with the reason to have a local currency is to supplement the existing Federal Reserve notes. Now, if you go back into the history of money, you had, people were trading seashells, different coinages. They had tally sticks in England for a while. There was barter. Barter is not really money, but when currencies are in short supply, people will use these other forms, and they've done so a number of times throughout history. Particularly in the U.S. Great Depression, there were a number of systems that where they made their own currencies or just kept a ledger, which is kind of like credit clearing. People have, for, I don't know, about 40 years now, I guess, there's been a thing called Ithaca Hours. And that is up in Ithaca in New York, upstate New York. And they basically they trade, instead of trading money, they say an hour of your work is equal to an hour of my work. And we'll talk about exactly how that might work and might not work out later. But that's like a time bank. And so what you do is you say you babysit or do a massage for an hour or something like that, and then you can call in that hour from anyone else in the community who participates in the time banking system. And that's what Sustainable Tucson basically has going on. They have a time banking system as opposed to a local currency. Now, back about 10, 15 so years ago, there was a thing called Tucson Traders, and that was in Tucson, obviously. And what they did is they actually issued little paper notes that were stamped and serialized, and then you could go ahead and pay for something in the Tucson Trader dollars, and they were redeemable for for $1, or for, you can just pay with one of those at places that took them. Now also just a couple of years ago, in 2009 and 8, I guess 8, 9, and a little bit into 10, there's a thing called Tucson Life Cash, or Tucson Local Currency, TLC for short. And what that was about is trying to revive a local currency and have it based online. And I was part of that group. Mary DeCamp was part of that group. She just most famously ran for mayor opposite Rothschild on the Green Party. And there were several others. And eventually that group got, oddly enough, incorporated into Sustainable Tucson, much to my dismay. Anyway, what happens, though, when you have money or any sort of other alternate currencies? And Federal Reserve notes are basically, I mean, if you make like a little piece of paper that's $1 and you pass it around like it's worth $1, and people treat it and say, look, I think that that's $1, I'm going to have faith in this sort of thing because I believe that's $1. I mean, it's not, a piece of gold, it's just a piece of paper. I mean, it's not worth very much money intrinsically. The paper's not worth maybe a couple pennies, the ink, So it's not really worth that much, but it symbolizes, and that's the kind of money that we have right now. It's called fiat currency. It's the Federal Reserve notes. And those are, they're made from the Federal Reserve banking system, and that was, you might call it the creature from Jekyll Island in 1913. Basically, Woodrow Wilson got elected on the promise that if he would go ahead and create this entity, the Federal Reserve Bank, then he could be president for 2 terms, or however many. But basically, the bankers were instrumental in electing Wilson because he promised to organize a national fractional reserve banking system. And that's another thing that I was wanting to speak about. Well, what is any of that stuff? We've been throwing terms around. Obviously, LETS, local economic trading system. So it's local. It's an economic trading. So you're trading economically in a system to do that. There's fractional reserve banking. Now, what that is when money is lent into being, and here's the thing, you can print up a note, say, but in order to have it, to make it worth anything, you would lend it to someone so that they then owe you something for it. Okay, now maybe I should repeat that. So let's say you get like a mortgage for your house, okay? The bank doesn't have the money necessarily of the entire price of your house. But what they can do is they can lend you that money because of what is known as fractional reserve. They don't need to have all of that money on hand before they give it to you. They can go ahead and say, all right, well, we have like 10% is usually the number that they use. We have about 10. I mean, the economic collapse happened because the fractional reserve of a lot of the big banks was down to about 3, 2. Lehman Brothers was less than 1% of what they had all these junk, credit default swaps and stuff like that that were basically worthless, and they traded their money for that. So instead of having all this extra reserve, it got smaller and smaller, and so if you're down to like 1%, you basically shouldn't be in business because you basically owe 100 times more money than you actually have to pay people with. And if people start saying, hey, can I get some of that, what you owe me back? And they're like, uh-oh, bankruptcy. And that's what happened to Lehman Brothers. So what it is when say you lend the money for a mortgage, you end up, the bank doesn't have that entire money to lend, but it says it does. And that's what fractional reserve banking is. It's basically lying. Okay? Now, so when yeah, I know. And you wonder why our banking system is so messed up. Okay, the other thing that you can do, other than that, there's another, I mentioned this briefly earlier, there's credit clearing. And what that is you, instead of giving people, like say businesses who buy things, all right, let's say buy a lot of stock and they do it like monthly and stuff like that. Well, what credit clearing systems allow is for the company that is buying the stock that the inventory, whatever, they can put that on credit, not a credit card, but just on credit, so that when they sell it and they make a profit, they can go and pay off the credit and then have some money left over and then get more on credit. And they never pay up and pay. But what that is credit clearing, and usually those are like based on a 30-day span or maybe a 90-day quarterly. So every month or every quarter, you have to settle up. But you've had 30 days or 90 days to go ahead and sell your inventory, and chances are you can pay. But what that is, I mean, there are hardly any businesses that would be able to afford to stay open if it were not for credit clearing systems, because they wouldn't be able to afford the initial investment, the outlay, to buy all of their inventory first. Now, that's the problem with small businesses, is that a lot of them, they throw in like 50 grand or something like, just to get all the stuff. When I was doing internet convenience store, I did not use credit clearing. I bought everything and made sure I had cash on hand, and yeah. And then there were occasional infusions of cash from wealthy people. But yeah, we didn't use that. But there are many businesses that including like very big ones, like say Amazon or something. They don't, the paper to send those books out or whatever. That doesn't. They don't like. They don't buy that first and then print the books, and they borrow the books, and then when they sell them, they pay back the people that they borrow that from. So that's a fairly, and then another thing in history I wanted to mention, that there's another form of, and this is kind of weird because it's almost barter, but it's actually not. There's a group called the Rainbow Family of Living Light. And they are, people know them as like rainbow or hippies, or those rainbow hippie people or whatever. They have gatherings where like 50,000 people or something will show up in the middle of a national forest. 14 years ago in 1998, they had one in Arizona. I went there. We were briefly the 4th largest city in Arizona for about 2 weeks, in the middle of the White Mountains. Yeah. In a national forest, and I brought a bunch of cigarettes, because at rainbow gatherings, cigarettes are actually currency. They don't take money. They don't take Federal Reserve notes. They're like, no, 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 I don't want the money thing going on here. They instead will either barter, and this is a weird way of thinking about it because really cigarettes are used as money because people who don't smoke cigarettes will accept cigarettes in exchange for something, knowing that they can go ahead and take those cigarettes and pay for something else with those cigarettes. So it's like kind of like seashells, except they're also a consumable good. So I can't think of anything that's like that, where you have a consumable good that's also used as a form of currency. Although I did hear recently that Tide in the drug cultures and the black market is being used to pay for drugs because money is in such short supply. And I guess what people will do is they'll run into stores and steal Tide. Why Tide? Why not Surf? I have no idea. Maybe people know Tide. It's a recognizable brand name, but yeah. But so they'll grab Tide and then use the Tide to pay. And those giant bottles of Tide aren't cheap. They're like $15, $20 or something. And so they'll use it to pay for their whatever. And then I guess, I don't know what happens to all the Tide. I guess there might be drug dealers with huge stocks of Tide in their houses. If you see a house that's got a shed full of Tide, you know something's going on. All right. So anyway, I was going to talk about why you would want to use, say, which form of these works best. Like, which one is the one that's going to, for a need of a community, say. Or it depends on, Ithaca, New York isn't all that big, and so they use the hours thing. I have some issues with the hours thing because it's like, what you're implying is that 1 hour of work by a neurosurgeon is equal to, say, 1 hour of work by a car interior detailer or something like that. And obviously that's not at all true. I mean, no one needs a car interior detailer, really. I mean, that's kind of, and geez, if you need a neurosurgeon, okay. So, so it's kind of weird that way. But the other problem that there's also also exists with when you have physical notes or a ledger system or something like that. Instead of handing out notes, you could just say, okay, well, you have a balance of this, and make a ledger, or you could put the ledger online, which is what Tucson Life Cash was doing, which is not what Sustainable Tucson is doing. They're doing the Ithaca Hours, the Time Banks USA, timebanks.org, and the problem with when you issue a monetary value, aside from that, you have to still report your earnings to the IRS, although the role of the organization keeping the ledger is roughly, they about have the same reporting, they have the same need to report to the IRS as, say, would the Federal Reserve banking system report who has which Federal Reserve note to the IRS. So obviously the organization itself doesn't have to tell the IRS what's going on with its members, but it's up to the members individually to report their earnings to the IRS with the actual currency type systems as opposed to the hour type systems, because it's hard to place a monetary value on an hour that's essentially volunteered. So what the problem is, the other problem with the currencies as opposed to the hours, the currency model as opposed to the hour model, is that with currencies, if you pin it to the dollar, and then the dollar, if the dollar fluctuates or inflates or something, or all of a sudden it takes $300 to buy a loaf of bread, what happens? Excuse me. What happens to the local currencies? And if you don't pin your value to the dollar, you could have an exchange rate between your local currency and the dollar, but then you could get into all sorts of fun, weird SEC problems with that. And then the other problem is with if you're doing multiple, let's say you have a megalopolis like DC and Baltimore and all those little towns in between, and Laurel and Glen, whatever, and Chevy Chase, and let's say one town, and you want to go, over to the next town. Well, you can't trade whereas with ours you potentially could, although you'd still have to combine your ledger systems. We need actually to have a worldwide local economic trading systems exchange, so that all the local currencies are listed, and then you have exchange rates between them, whether they're hours or currencies or what, so that you don't have to use Federal Reserve notes of, say, if you want to buy some jam or whatever, maple syrup from Vermont or something. And, so what we would need to do is we would need to get some sort of better synergy between all these local systems, maybe combining somehow hours with currencies where you could charge more than 1 hour for an hour of labor if you were a neurosurgeon, or maybe charge a half an hour if you were a car detailer. So we still have to. It's got a little work to be done, but the whole basis of how you would go about doing it, whether hours or whether with just local currencies, so that it can't be taken and abused like the current system of Federal Reserve notes. That's what we're working towards. That's what Occupy, National Occupy, is the global financial system. That's what they're working towards, is trying to figure out how to create a system that won't be so easily abused, but still provides the value of, and I'll go back to the page here. If you look right here, money should be a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. Now, so a medium of exchange, that's, it's if you want to exchange something with, say I have, I have a bike and I want to sell it, okay, and then I'll get money for that, so that will accomplish the exchange, because then I can take that money and go ahead and get other stuff and exchange the bike for other things, and many other things perhaps. And while I'm waiting to buy those other things, the money is a store of value. And then the third one, the second one on this list, is a unit of account. And that is just so that when you're actually showing what you have and how to delineate, like, how many of these do I have, how many, Now what's happened is basically on that the groups, like we got, Goldman Sachs, Lloyd's of London, the Chase City, whatever, all those banks, and all those, the too big to fail banks. You have these people creating these, with they petition. There was a thing called Glass-Steagall Act. It's an act that was passed by long ago by Congress, back in after the 1929 crash, actually, in the 30s. And what that said is that if you're going to engage, basically, I'm paraphrasing, it's fairly long, but it basically said that if you're going to engage in speculative trading, like if you think that maybe the price of gold will go up or down or whatever, or gas, or if the price of this mortgage will get paid, basically if you're going to run a betting game, which is what they're doing, then you can't also hold people's deposits. So if you're going to be a bank, you can be a bank. But if you want to be an investment financial, make up some crazy credit default swaps and slice and dice mortgages and all that, you can't be a bank. Now, what happened is that all these banks and all these investment houses were clamoring during the Clinton administration to repeal Glass-Steagall. And lucky for them, in 1994, Newt Gingrich and his contract out on America went ahead and he got into Congress, and then he got Congress, the Republican now controlled Congress, to repeal Glass-Steagall. And dumbass Clinton went ahead and signed that. Okay, now the problem is not with either the Republicans or the Democrats. The problem is with the Republicans, and the problem is with the Democrats. Okay, they're both the problem. Okay, so I don't agree with either of them. Now, the problem, again, is that when you say, okay, well, an investment house who's, obviously wildly speculating with money, if you combine that with a bank, then all the people's money from the bank can be used to speculate. And then when that happens and the speculation fails, like what happened with the housing bubble, where did all the money go? And then what happens? Well, then the banks need to get bailed out or they fail. Now, they should fail, but before that happens, or maybe I should say before that happens again, because we didn't fix the problem. We didn't reinstitute Glass-Steagall. We didn't fix anything. All we did was he threw a lot of money at him, and most of it didn't get paid back. There were a couple instances where some of the money got paid back. And the question really is what is the whole point of what are these people actually trying to do? I mean, what other than obviously enrich themselves at the taxpayers' expense, which they're doing a great job at. But really, what they're doing is it's like they're walking in to wherever with a nuke strapped to their back, saying, "Look, I'm gonna press this button. I'm gonna blow this up unless you pay me all your money." And like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna let them blow it up? I mean, basically, they're pointing a gun at you, saying, "Look, you're gonna." I mean, it's not the whole thing is gonna blow up. And unless we steal all your money, and that's what they're doing. These greedy corporate banksters, I call them banksters, and it's a question of what do you do? Okay, let's say we just give you all the money. All right, we give you all the you get all. Take every single Federal Reserve note, right here, have it. Okay, now what? What is it that you want now? What do you want? You want feudalism? Is that what you want? You want us to be your slaves? Is that what you want? Well, obviously you have all the money, so unless you're going to pay us to do something, we need to start our own economy. So, if we do start our own local economic trading system, and they do go ahead and proceed to try to basically tank the economy again, take out all the money from the economy, make us all poor, try to make us feel like we're slaves, we need to respond by making an economic trading system of our own and thereby make them irrelevant. All right? We need to actually make our own system independent from the banksters so that the banksters can go in their sandbox and play with their little Federal Reserve notes, and we can therefore go on with our lives, and they are now irrelevant. So, I think we need to start this today. Go to the, you can read that article. I have, the articles are linked right here. The Occupy the Global Financial System, the Sustainable Tucson website right here is linked. This is the local Occupy Tucson website. If you go to any of those, you can read up on what I was talking about. There is one more thing that I'd like to talk about, but let me see. Do we have? Looks like we have no phone calls. So let me go ahead and put up that Twitter feed here and see if we're getting anything on that. And it looks like, I think what it might be is everyone might be at there right now. What's going on is that there's a club crawl going on. All downtown Tucson is probably a club crawl, and so yeah, it wasn't entirely a mess getting down here because access to Tucson is in downtown Tucson. I was on a bike, so So it was easy to get down. There's another thing, another sort of system that exists. When you talk about any kind of, whether you're using Federal Reserve notes or local economic trading systems or time banks or barter or anything like that, that all falls under one category, and it's called reciprocity. Well, it's a version, it's called specific reciprocity. All right? So what you have is there are different kinds of reciprocity, meaning you're exchanging, essentially. But it's a fancy word for, exchanging. So specific reciprocity is when you specifically say, hey, I'm going to give you, $1 for that, pen or something, or whatever. Or here's $1.50 for a bus ride. Or, that's all specific reciprocity. Or even, hey, I'll trade you, free cigarettes for that beer or something like that, or whatever. Or for, something like that. All of that is, whether it's barter or whether it's paying or, or time banks. Here, I'll put my ad up for, heycomputerman.biz. I'll put that ad up on the Tucson time bank site, and somebody answers that, and I go to an hour, and now I have an hour banked up. That's still specific reciprocity. Now, what I'd like to talk about for the next about half hour or so, I guess, is a thing called general reciprocity. Now, general reciprocity is not the same as specific reciprocity. It's still reciprocity, but it's still exchanging. But what you're doing is, in general reciprocity, it's also, things don't have an intrinsic value. You don't have a system where something, a hen is equal to an X or something like that in value or whatever it is. What you have is a system where I'm hungry, I need a sandwich, and then there's a sandwich. I go get the sandwich, okay? And then people are like, I need computer help. Can you help me with computers? Okay, and I go and I'm like, yeah, okay, here, I'll help you with computers. But there's no money, and there's no barter, and there's no ledger, and there's no, and what some people call a gift society. So you just give gifts. The entire economy exists by giving gifts. And that's something that we could do regardless of whether or not we set up some sort of time bank or because nothing is kept track of. Now there's obviously, you can see many problems with this. But because, what if someone just says, okay, well, I need that, and doesn't give back? Okay, well, here's what you can do. And what about people, say, who who are not handicapped, well, not, like, say, bedridden or something like that? Okay, well, everyone breathes, all right, and everyone shits. Everyone takes a crap and pisses, all right? There's excrements, and then there's, right. And what we can do is we can use those items, at least. We can use the carbon that you breathe out, carbon dioxide that you breathe out, and the fecal matter or waste matter. And what you can do is you can make energy out of those things. Now, the way you make energy out of carbon dioxide is you get bacteria to breathe it in and then turn it into something like oil, plastics, things like that. Now, you can genetically modify bacteria to do that. You could probably genetically modify bacteria to do the same thing with, excrement and waste. People are doing this. This is another reason why we don't need oil or don't need to drill baby drill for it, particularly not in areas that are oceans or wildlife refugees or, So I did a show on this way back. It was the question of non-valuation. It's actually, seasons are here. Let me switch over. Let's see down here, season 2. And there it is, discussion of non-valuation. So, yeah, And I was talking about Samai and other people who do this already, who already operate under general reciprocity. The largest society is the Samai. We were a tribe in Africa, I believe. And they, for years and years and years and years, eons and eons and eons, have been just operating, and there's like 25,000 of them altogether. So it's not like any small deal. It's not like a household. Okay, there you go. A household practices general reciprocity, like so that. Okay, obviously you have somebody who probably works, and then probably somebody who stays at home, and but whatever. I'm just saying traditional family. Maybe everybody's working. Who knows? Maybe there's just. But what it is within the household. Typically, everybody contributes. Everybody chips in for the greater whole, and keeps telling me my wireless is connected. I'm like, yeah, thank you. It's connected. Good. Just stop telling me that. Everyone chips in to the greater good. And that's what it is you expand this sense of family. You expand the sense of, okay, well, we're working for the same common thing, because in a family, you don't charge each other for, hopefully anyway, you don't charge each other for, you want some milk, okay, that'll be 50 cents. Right? Okay. And, obviously for good reason, because children don't have money to afford it, nor do they have the ability to earn the money to pay. But the point is and it's not to say you need to treat half the people like children, although sometimes I wonder. But what you do is you end up with, if everyone feels like they are contributing toward something that they own and something that they're part of, they'll go ahead and just give, because it's all part of what they get as well. So when you contribute part of it, you get part back because you contributed. Now, there's a way of saying that, okay, well, that just means that's just against specific reciprocity, because you're saying, well, you have to contribute to get anything back. Well, okay. In order for society to exist, people need to make it happen. I mean, if everybody said, screw this, there's no more, what would happen, do you suppose? And, you have some sort of, laws to prevent people from stealing from each other. But, if everybody just says, I'm not making anything else, no. Well, what would happen? I mean, how would, And so the reason that there is money is to prevent people from, it's to incentivize people to do stuff. But if people had a different incentive, meaning if people understood why they want everything to occur and all of society to be better and have maybe not direct democracy, but have an actual say and voice and things and be more represented, people would probably be less apathetic, less incentivized by money, and more incentivized by the fact that they just want a better society. Now, if that sounds a lot like Star Trek, maybe it is. But, that's that. In Star Trek, they did not have money, by the way. They used the exact same system that I'm talking about. They used general reciprocity. You notice, no one got paid. If there were societies like those little Ferengi guys, with the ears, that were always wanting money and always, press latinum and whatnot, then, you deal with them in their exchange just for convenience. But amongst the whole, Federation of Planets and stuff, there was no money. People got rid of that, I guess, 200 years from now? So I hope it doesn't take that long. But as I was saying, what might take that a lot less time is if these banksters pull another economic collapse. And then it's a question of what do we do? If they intentionally collapse the economy to enrich themselves again, And don't think that the last time it happened, it was by accident. I mean, they knew what they were doing. They knew that there were obvious, like, they were selling expensive mortgages to people that they knew could not afford them. They knew that they couldn't afford them, sold them to them anyway, because, hey, someone's going, well, number one, because in the meantime, people are going to go ahead and pay their monthly mortgage amount to gain equity back in their house, and then the people that are then, splitting up the mortgages, the lenders get that money, and the people that actually, when they buy the the sliced and diced up mortgage, they're not getting, even though they own a little bit of a lot of mortgages, and that's supposed to spread the risk. But if all of them are bad, you end up with what happened. If the people who actually own those things, they were not in fact getting paid. So, because they were the actual owners of the mortgage. And then that's a whole other thing we could probably discuss, but it's getting a little off topic. But the whole thing of if you do get foreclosed on, make sure that they can produce the original mortgage documents. Because if they can't, then they can't show ownership. And if they can't show ownership, then they can't foreclose. Because who are they to? In order for someone to sue to foreclose, they have to have standing. Okay, the standing means that you have an interest in the outcome of what goes on. So like, I can't sue because somebody stole something from somebody else. I have no standing in what two other people did aside from me completely. I can't go say, oh, I'm suing you because you stole their thing, right? So that's essentially what these people are doing. These big mortgage companies that sold out all of the credit default swaps and the slice and dice mortgages, they sold their interest in the mortgage. Okay, so they don't own it anymore. So they can't sue you for not paying the people that you're supposed to, that aren't getting the money anyway, because they sold it and now because the whole scheme is one big fraud. I mean, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense. What you should, if the mortgage gets transferred, then they should alert you. Okay, instead of paying, the people you've been paying, now you have to be paying, so and so, all these people, or something like that, or the trust that accommodates all these people. No, that never happens, right? And the thing is that because basically it's one big fraud. And I really think that, and here's another problem, is it's not being investigated as fraud. It is fraud, but there's no one saying, other than perhaps me, Alex Jones, who else? No one's really saying, maybe Jerome Corsi, no one else is saying that that's one huge giant fraud, and it needs to be obviously stopped, investigated. People need to be, face criminal charges for setting these things up. And then just on the basis of that, it was fraud. On almost any other basis, what they're doing, because of how the law has been relaxed, it is, and you hear this a lot, that people say that the way it all went down like that is because it was legal. Well, fraud has never been legal. So what they're saying is that creating certain instruments of financial instruments and then selling them, that's legal. And it is for banks to sell financial instruments. That's the whole repeal of Glass-Steagall made that legal. So that is correct. That part of it is legal, but you still can't commit fraud in the process. You still have to, which is the problem, because that's what was happening with all of the banks that sold these things. Now, all right. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are prepared. And I don't mean like food in the thing. All we need to do is go on living the exact same way we're living. Just keep going to work. Well, depending on who you work for, you know, maybe go help out at a local farm or something like that, because we're going to need food. Okay, somebody's got to keep the electric on if we're going to keep using it. I think that we could probably switch different forms of electric. Maybe not from just coal and nuclear, but we can. I mean, we are starting to use like wind and solar and stuff like that. But that's there are other, and not like hydrothermal or geothermic or hydrologic, like dams or thermal vents or even natural gas or anything like that. We don't need any of those. We don't need fracking. We don't need more oil. We don't need anything like that. There are two things that most people, when they talk about renewable energy, they totally leave off. And what those things are, you have wave energy, and not like quantum vacuum wave energy, although that would be great if we could figure out how to use that. That's probably for a different show. Maybe the one back in season 2 is I'll have to do another theoretical physics show. Hopefully, in what, 2 months, I'll have a show on Access Tucson. So you never know. It's going down to one channel. We're going to be talking about that on our last show. But anyway, you have waves, like on the ocean, there are waves, or maybe in large lakes, there are waves. Okay, well, what happens is you put some logs on the lakes. They'll go like this. Okay, wave. Okay, so what happens here is if you put them together and hinge them, okay, so that they're hinged, okay, so they'll go like this, and so what's happening is it'll go, it turns this way, okay, so it's turning this hinge back and forth, essentially. And what you can do, and there are a couple ways you can do this, but if you think, like, let's say instead of it being like this, let's say that here's your bicycle, okay, and there's your seat and your handlebars and your back tire and your front tire, and you do this with the pedals. You go like this. Okay, you're going to move. You're going to move forward, and then it ratchets, and then you move forward again, and then it ratchets. Okay, so what you do is you put a little chain driving a generator. Now, so for the ratcheting action, what you do is you put another chain in a figure 8, so that you get the reverse ratchet. So you're spinning this generator both ways on a double ratchet set every time this thing moves. And then you don't just have 2 logs, you have hundreds of logs with hundreds of generators in the inside of the, right. And you put them on a very long string, and not just one string, but thousands of strings. Okay? Right. So you have all these logs doing this and making energy. That does not stop. Okay? That is a constant source of power. That provides baseline. Here's another thing that does. Tides. The ocean has tides, particularly in places like the Bay of Fundy, where the sea goes up and down like 30 feet every, 12 hours. It'll go up and down, or 6 hours, whatever. Point is, it'll go up for 6, down for 6, up for 6, yeah. The point is that what you do, just like in a, you don't put a turbine exactly, but what you do is you put like a propeller. And so when the water rushes in, it spins the propeller. The water rushes out, it spins the other way, but who cares which way it spins, because you have the same sort of idea. You have the same concept of a reversible generator getting turned, producing power every time the water is moving, which again does not stop. It doesn't stop when it gets cloudy. It doesn't stop at night. The tides and the wave action both continue in perpetuity. As long as there's water, these things will happen. And people never talk about this, because this would actually replace coal and nuclear. And that's why it never gets talked about, because people are making too much money from coal, nuclear, oil, things like that, natural gas. They're making too much money to consider picking another energy source, even if it means killing their grandchildren. And frankly, those people, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what, I mean, where is the disconnect in their heads that they cannot actually understand that they are not helping anyone by keeping this system going? Why do they think that they are just somehow, all they're concerned about is enriching their pockets, and it's something that the site, just put it on again here, down here, money as a store of value. The fact that money, you can get rich off money, is in the last. It's the last of these that leads to all the systematic abuse and criminality, and also with usury, which is interest, charging of interest. So, money used to just facilitate things. Yes, if you facilitate exchanges with money, a medium of exchange up here, it's great with that. But the reason that it's getting so, well, right here, the value is being hoarded, availability manipulated, markets distorted, in order for people essentially to make more money. And I'm going to put the phone numbers back up. So that's the whole issue with all of the with the why people are, not only the banking systems, but the whole pharmaceutical healthcare system. It all turned into, let's see how much money we can squeeze out of this, and then and screw the people who the system's supposed to help, and they just want to go ahead and I'm checking to see if there's any tweets. They just want to go ahead and keep all of it for themselves. So, and that's what I was saying earlier. What happens when they get it all, or almost all? What do we do then? We need, and this is what I said about a half an hour ago, they want to basically return us to feudalism. It was years and years ago that we used to operate under this feudalistic system. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You've learned it in school, hopefully. There were kings, and then they had their vassals, that little properties, and then they had serfs on the land. And the serfs were actually, they were considered to be part of the land. If you sold one of your fiefs or your fiefdoms or whatever, you would sell all the people on it as well, and they were just part of the land. They didn't have rights. They didn't have, the only people with rights were the people who were the kings and their subjects and the vassals of their kingdom, the people who, and they were, and that's basically the way. There are about 3,600 people on this planet that want to keep it exactly that way. And what happened is the peasants rose up because they didn't like the conditions, and they organized, they got rid of the kings. Well, a lot of them started becoming merchants instead of just farming the soil, and they formed unions and fraternities and other things like that. And I don't mean like Illuminati fraternities. I mean, well, although there was some of that, but they formed these organizations that then rose up against the kings. And ever since the kings got taken out of power, they've been trying to get back in. And the way they've been trying to get back in is with corporations. And now corporations have become the new kings. And these corporations are getting bigger and bigger. They're operating in banking, pharma, energy, pretty much all of the industries, prisons, military, you name it. And there's basically some form of this corrupt system sitting up there trying to reap in all the money while giving as little as they can back. I talked in another show about how corporations at one point were chartered to provide a specific good for a specific period of time. And now that's just completely gone out the window. They can last in perpetuity. They don't have to provide any good. In fact, the only good they're required to and they're legally obligated to provide is for their stockholders. They're set so that they can't make decisions that would affect public good at the risk of harming their stockholders, which is illegal according to, because you're defrauding the stockholders. Now, and then it leads to just ignoring all the what's known as externalities, the side effects, which is pollution, destruction of the environment, global climate change, and that's that. Okay, so they've been struggling to keep their kings as corporations so that they can return us to feudalism. Now, what I've said, and I'm looking at the time here, I'm sure you're pretty close, we got a couple more minutes. Looks like we have no phone calls, so that's all right. Here, I'll just put this back. Oh yeah, I'll leave the Twitter up. All right. So anyway, what we need to do when they try to put us back into feudalism, all right, what we need to do is we need to have a system, and that's why I'm talking tonight about lets and time banks and the future of local currencies, because the local economic trading systems, whether it's local currencies or time trading like Ithaca Hours or like Tucson, Sustainable Tucson, the time bank that they're doing, whatever we use, or whether it's general reciprocity, where we go ahead and we live in a gift society where we just do, and we all agree to just do and cooperate for the betterment of society. We need to have a plan in place. We need to set up organizations like this all over the nation, all over the world, so that when, and I don't mean if, I mean when, and I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm saying, in a year, 2, 3, whenever they do it, I doubt it will be 20. It would probably be more like 5 or less. When they crash the economy again, and intentionally crash the economy again so they can try to make us more like slaves, more like serfs, we need to have a system in place already so that we can therefore make them irrelevant. We need to make them irrelevant. Say, here, take your Federal Reserve notes. We don't want them. We got local currency. Screw you. We're going home. And we need to do that. We need to absolutely make sure that that is there. Go to the website right here. Send me email. Go to the forums. There are forums. We can talk about all of this. Get on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Illegal Knowledge on Facebook. Let's organize and let's. And that'll be our show for tonight. Join us again May 19th. I will have Dustin Cox on, and we'll probably maybe have some other candidates. Thank you, everybody. Good night.